Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about finding your own path, your own way, and embracing the imperfection of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches, former HR professionals, and mums, Kirsty and Catherine.
We love to discuss the topics that come up time and time again for our coaching clients and which affect us all, from things like acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
Each episode ends with a question for you and us to reflect on. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves.
Welcome to another episode of Mission Imperfect. Today we have a slightly different episode because, we like to throw in the odd curveball now and again. But we realised a tiny bit later than we intended, but it's actually been a full year of Mission Imperfect. We have been releasing episodes every week for over a year now. So we thought, let's just take a moment to recognise that we have done that for a year and talk a little bit about being a year on and looking at success and failure over a period of time. So over to you, Kirsty. This was your idea for this episode.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't let that anniversary go by, even if we were a little bit tardy in recognising it.
Yes.
So,
Wow,
over the
there it is.
we got there in the end. That's what matters. Our intro episode aired on the 16th of October 2024, and our first full episode was a week later on the 23rd of October 2024. So I have no idea what day it is at the moment, but we have definitely done a full year, more than a year, of an episode per week, which is what we set out intending to do. And
Mm,
I think in anyone's book, we've got to classify that as a success.
yes, I agree.
Yeah, we haven't had a break. Although in our own minds we have split ourselves into series just to neaten things up. We haven't taken a break between series. We haven't missed a week. And according to information found on Apple Podcasts, many industry sources report that 90% of podcasts don't make it past 3 episodes. Now, of the 10% that do make it past 3 episodes, 90% of those podcasts don't make it past episode 20.
Gosh,
So I
that's quite
mean,
striking, isn't it? I'm surprised about that first statistic of just 3 episodes because that's like you've barely got going and then it's finished. I mean, that seems really a small number. I'm quite surprised by that, although I'm not so surprised about the second one because it is quite. I think we realize it is quite an undertaking, actually, isn't it? Producing an
yes,
episode to go out every week. But I'd like to think we went into it with our eyes open a bit. I mean, we've still learned as we've gone along because sometimes you just don't know until you're in something, right? How it's going to work out.
yeah. I mean, in keeping with what we were talking about in our episode on guidance rather than rules for life, we were saying about how you don't necessarily know everything or see everything at the time. But I think we did pretty well in sort of sussing out that it would require time and effort to keep this going. And, we put measures in place around that. I mean, we recorded episodes for 2 episodes a week for many weeks before we even launched, didn't we? To make sure we had a buffer and
Yeah.
that we could keep going for those. Well, I think it was it 4 or 5 months? We had all our episodes ready to go. And then we're continuing to record so that we built up. So we created a little routine for ourselves and we committed to that, didn't we?
Yes. Yeah, and I think it was something that in those early days in particular, we had so many ideas of what we wanted to talk about. And I think I'll be honest, that's probably one of my if I was to ever give not that anyone's asked me, Kirsty, but if they did ask me for any advice about doing a podcast, it would
Catherine, what
be
advice have you got for people starting
Gibbs
podcasts?
asking Kirsty. I think it would be just to have in your mind a vision of how is it going to look long term? What
Hmm.
are you going to be talking about? What kind of format are you going to have? Because I think we knew what one of the things I think appealed to us is that it was always going to be a conversation between the two of us around a topic, or sometimes we knew early on we would have some guest episodes on topics that were ones where we could get in a guest expert for certain areas because we knew we had our mission was to talk about navigating life imperfectly, which, to be honest, gives us such a big platform of what we
Yeah.
can talk about. And yet, I'd say now in hindsight, if I'm going to say a bit of a learning, that's almost been a blessing and a curse. Do you know what I mean? In that almost nothing is off limits. So it's not like people might find us for something really specific. That's potentially a learning for
Yeah,
me.
that's
If I
true.
think about some of the podcasts I listen to, they often tend to go over very similar or very, very connected things in a much sort of narrower field on sort of loop.
Hmm.
But I don't mind that. So that's been interesting for me to recognize it doesn't necessarily have to be such a broad field that, that everything is a possibility to talk about to be successful. That's been an interesting insight.
True. I guess that there are some people out there who have a very clear message they want to put across, and they will keep shaping things to that message.
Mm.
And that can be really useful because it's that kind of repetition and, coming in from different angles and different perspectives that is going to help make something stick for somebody for whom that's helpful. But I have to confess, I do enjoy the randomness of our approach. The fact
Oh
that
yes, we've
we can
definitely had some
suddenly
random
go,
episodes in
oh,
there.
let's talk about that. Um,
And
bec-
biscuits have become
yeah,
a
of course.
well-established feature in our episodes. We were just lamenting actually that Kirsty does not have a biscuit to go with her coffee as we are recording.
I know. I blame the episode on eating for energy that you did the other day with a guest expert. It's ruined me.
Oh, really? Has it put you off biscuits?
But I won't go quite that far, but it has made me think about my consumption a little bit. I
Oh,
know
sorry.
it's scary, isn't it? Scary. Don't worry, I will be having some later. Yeah. This is not a complete, personality transformation. All is well.
No, no, I
Um,
wouldn't ask for that either.
so yeah, in terms of saying how successful we feel being, we were absolutely determined that we weren't going to be one of those podcasts that just fell by the wayside in the first year. And we have stuck to that and we've achieved it. And I'm very proud of that. I think having the two of us involved, we kind of egged each other on and we didn't want to let each other down. And I think that's really helped.
Yes, definitely. I think it would have been a much, certainly speaking personally, I think it would have been a much harder undertaking to do it on my own and keep that motivation
Mm.
and accountability going. Um, Definitely.
And we've managed it alongside sort of ups and downs in our personal lives, changes in our professional circumstances. I mean, I'm now in employment alongside continuing to work on my coaching business. And that made a huge difference to when we could record and the time that was available. And we've navigated that. Um, and you've been incredibly accommodating around that. I mean, some of our first episodes when we're recording in the evening were perhaps a little more random than usual. I think it's
Yeah,
fair to
people
say.
might hear some stifled yawning going on because we were so not used to it.
But perhaps also the most natural ones, and the ones where we actually sort of had perhaps the most honest conversations. I don't know. But
Mm.
we have navigated all that. We have kept to it, and more to the point, I think we've been. Well, speaking for myself, I've enjoyed it. I enjoy our conversations. I've enjoyed the process. I enjoy any excuse to talk about the kind of stuff that I find interesting about just getting through life day to day.
Yeah.
But having said all that, and I think this might be a part of why so many podcasts don't get off the ground, is perhaps expectations around audience numbers and engagement. Because without going into detail, I think it's probably fair to say that our audience is not at a level that's going to be challenging podcasts like the Diary of a CEO.
I'm sure we're close. No, I think you're absolutely right. It's very interesting. It feels a bit like, in that respect, not too dissimilar to social media in the sense of followers and comments and so on. I mean, you put a podcast out there and you can see if you are getting listeners for it. And people can comment and message us, and we have had a few, but it probably hasn't, if we're being completely honest, not at the level that we would have perhaps hoped for. And it's not because I'm speaking personally, it's not like I thought, oh, I've got a number in mind and that means
Mm.
success. It hasn't been like that because, as we know,
No.
metrics can be a bit tricky. They don't necessarily mean anything. But it's like, are people getting something from this? It can feel like you're a bit like in social media that you're talking into the wind to a degree. It's like, what are people
Yes.
getting from us investing in doing this?
Yeah, I think that if we're talking in terms of success and failure, we just talk very honestly about why we feel it's been successful. But I personally don't feel we've been so successful in terms of any obvious impact on people. I mean, we're doing this
Mm.
because we believe that, people can benefit from more self-awareness leading to greater expectance, wrong word, making them up again.
Yep.
So greater self-awareness that can lead to greater self-acceptance, and that sort of opens up possibilities around believing in yourself and trusting yourself and greater confidence and living a
Mm.
life more in line with what you want and what matters to you. And that makes such a difference to how happy you feel, to your emotional and mental well-being. And we're both really invested in wanting to help people achieve that for themselves. I think
Yes.
we've seen what it can do for us, and we want to share it. We want people to know about it. In an ideal world, we'd love them to come to us for coaching to help achieve
Mm.
that. Um, but even if they don't do that, we'd like to think that people were listening and getting something from it, that we can help make a bit of a difference. Would that be a fair
Oh,
assessment?
definitely, definitely. And even just you saying that, it really did spur on for me that feeling of yes, and it would be why I would continue to do it and just hope to perhaps do a bit more to spread our message to people and encourage more people to have a listen. I mean, we've always said you'll see that we talk about a topic, and some may be of more interest than others.
Mm.
But in terms of getting I guess the equivalent of like a loyal following it's been difficult. I don't perhaps maybe that was one of my areas of naivety coming into this. I didn't really think about the building part. We just thought about the practicalities of how do we do it and launch it and what should we talk about, not perhaps the other side. So, you know, every day's a school day, as they say.
Yeah. I mean, we did to some extent, I think, because that determination to keep an episode a week, and we've aimed for around the half-hour mark ish, with varying degrees of success.
Yes.
Um, and a lot of that was about, not wanting people who had started to listen to forget about us, for people to know what they were getting, to encourage them to keep coming back. And something I think we were very wise about actually is we have not spent time looking at the numbers and analysing them. Do we glance at them every so often? Yes. I think it would be very hard to not have any idea. But we we have not obsessed about them. And perhaps that's why so many podcasts fail, because if you see in those early days that you're getting 3 listens, it can be pretty disheartening,
Mm.
especially if you've got a number in mind for where you think you want to be and what you want to get to. Whereas if you can sort of put that to one side and concentrate on, I guess, what you want from it, what we wanted from it,
Yeah. And
that,
I think to a degree we did talk about that, about our reasons for doing it. And I think that is so
mm,
important. And I think you had a really great question around this, Kirsty, because whilst we are talking a bit about 1 year on and looking at success and failure and what it's actually meant for us in real time for this, your question was, what if things are allowed to be what they are rather than having to be judged successes or failures? Which I think is a really helpful question, and hopefully one that everyone listening can perhaps apply to something that's happening in their lives. Doesn't have to be putting out a podcast like this, but it could readily apply to something else, because I think this has given us the opportunity to reflect on this experience, and we've already talked about what might we do a little bit differently moving ahead, but the reasons behind that I think are actually quite important, and not just assessing it,
Yeah.
well, this worked, whatever that means, and this didn't. It's what actually do we want from this process, and what do we continue to want?
Yes. Yes. That I don't know if it worked or it didn't work. How do you really define that?
Mm.
And I mean, I think we've covered the ways in which we think of it as a success or failure, but I think the way in which it matters to me is that, our mission imperfect experience feels very aligned with my core values, which I sum up with the words light, open, and trust. And that matters to me. And it's, I've made some big changes in how I am managing my business and earning a living, and through that, the one thing I knew I wanted to keep going was the podcast. It would have been an easy thing to let slip, buy back a bit of time, not have to worry about keep turning it out when our timings got thrown out by my return to employment. It would have been very easy to let go of it.
Yeah,
It wasn't like we had millions of followers that have been distraught by our absence. Um, but we kept going. It felt good to us and it mattered. And that just feels like a good thing, right?
yeah. I think we're very similar in this respect, because
Yeah.
I try to look. I don't like terms that seem very opposite and polarized and finite, success and failure. We've spoken about both those terms, no surprise to our listeners, in former episodes. And for me, I kind of try to shift it to what's the point? And I know what's the point can sound like a really passive aggressive question, but I even say that a little bit tongue in cheek. But if you take away the judgy sounding part and take it really at face value, what's the point?
Yes.
For me, it's like, well, why do it? Why am I doing it? Why do I want to continue doing it? And it's became down to the fact, well, we actually enjoy it, and there is a message that we want to put out there. And I think we're both fans of this format, perhaps a bit more so than social media, which seems to be a very transient field to try and navigate. But we do acknowledge, on the flip side, it would be nice to have a more engaged and perhaps growing audience for that. But it's not a reason that I would consider saying, well, let's just not do it anymore. That's perhaps something to try and work on.
Yeah. And again, I think it's, as coaches as well, having a client that your coaching makes a difference to is what matters. If you can have many clients you make a difference to, that's great too. But the point is a client that you make a human being who is in a better place because of your coaching is at the heart of it. So even
Yeah,
if you don't have hundreds of clients, making a difference to one person matters. And I think that applies to the podcast too. If there are, a handful of people who are listening regularly and go, I enjoyed that. That's made me think. I'm gonna change this up. I feel that somebody else gets the way I feel, or it was good to hear that not everybody thinks they have to do life in this way. That's a win. The
yeah.
fact that we don't know that it's happened can be a little depressing, let's be honest. Um, but we can still choose to believe that is happening for people. And that's a nice feeling.
It is. It is. And back in keeping this week, we have got some quotes specifically about success and I do really like the ones that you found this week, Kirsty.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, there are a lot of pretty naff ones out there. Um, and I'm focusing in on one here that says that there is only one success: to be able to spend your life in your own way, by somebody called Christopher Morley. And I like that stripping away of the shoulds from it.
Yeah.
It boils down to your life, your way.
And I particularly like this one. And I think this has really been true of what we've just been speaking about with the podcast. And that is success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. If you love what you are doing, you will be successful. And that's by somebody called Albert Schweitzer.
Yeah,
I think that might be how you say that. I really like that idea of
Schweitzer.
it's not the success that comes first to lead to happiness, it's the happiness that comes first. And it's the most important thing. That is what success is, actually.
Yes, you don't have to measure it in other people's terms. If you feel good about it, that's successful for you.
Mm.
And one that made me laugh, from W.C. Fields. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Then quit. Don't be a damn fool about it.
Yes.
I, I, I kind of have this idea that, you know what, some things maybe won't work, won't give you what you want, won't make you feel happy or that you're doing things your way. And if that's the case, I've talked about life chapters and resets and everything else. You don't have to stick to something just because you started it. If it isn't working for you, if you don't feel happy and successful in doing it, then why do it?
Yeah. What's the point? There we go. So we do have a question this week related to this idea of success and failure. But I like this idea that you put on it, Kirsty, that consider something in your life that you might deem a success or a failure. How do you feel about letting go of the need to label it as either? And I really love that question because I think it actually gives you an opportunity to see it in a different light. And I hope we've made that clear just from what we've been saying about our podcast. There's things that we've perhaps deemed successful about it that other people wouldn't. There's things that perhaps would be deemed unsuccessful about it that people probably would agree with. And yet we've decided that it is something that we want to continue and that we enjoy doing because that's our version of success. But we're trying to be realistic and have our eyes open about what it has meant for us. It's not all been easy or smooth or totally as expected, but that's life. As we spoke about last week in our rules for life, that is sometimes how the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I we can both answer the question with the podcast. I would, in my personal life, my first marriage ended in divorce, and it was a pretty long and bitter aftermath. And it is very hard not to label that as failure. But it lasted for just over a decade. We had some very good times. I learned a lot about myself. We produced a pretty fabulous human being. In those terms, successful. But when you start, yeah, but then it failed in inverted commas. It broke down. You you can, and I have, spend a lot of time trying to balance that rationally in your own head, and it becomes very emotive and quite draining trying to find the right way of categorizing something like that in your own mind and how you feel about it. And challenging myself to actually go, you know what? It just is. It just is what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
And that's, it's a whole package of an experience with good and bad. And that's okay. I am where I am. I like where I am in the aftermath of all that. And just recognizing that it feels pretty liberating and quite
yeah.
peaceful, actually.
I really like it. I think it's a great question, and I realised more so now probably than when I was younger that I don't, at least I don't think I do, spend too much time deliberating on whether something is a success or a failure because I basically look back and see a series of events with ups and downs, twists and
Mm.
turns, which you could say those are the successes and the failures, but I haven't really defined them as such. So, I mean, some personal experiences. You could say, I succeeded at school, but a failure would be that I probably didn't enjoy it as much as I perhaps could have done. I could have perhaps relaxed a little bit more and not been
Mm,
so preoccupied with doing well than I was. So you see two flip sides of the experience there.
yeah.
But I haven't labeled it in such a way. And similarly, when I had my daughter, my body was actually failing me, and that did end early because I couldn't stay
Mm,
pregnant any longer. But then I have my amazing daughter from that terrible experience. And at the same time, self-employment has definitely had its fair share
yes.
of brilliant highs, like getting my trademark and having two clients in 1 week
Mm,
and some amazing highs. And also at the same time, the lows of like, how do I explain what I do better? Because that's something that I've always wrestled with life coaching. Um, am I talking into the wind? Let's not
mm.
dwell on social media. So there's definitely been the
Sore
successes and the
point. Yeah.
failures in that chapter too. But and as I mentioned, I think I'm on the cusp of another new chapter now, and I'm fully expecting more twists and turns again. But I'm hoping that I'll see it more as learnings rather than failures. Because as we spoke about in Guidance for Life, there will be bumps in the road. Things are not going to go always according to plan.
Yeah.
And I actually prefer to see it in, and I think it's healthier. I think that level of acceptance of it, it's not going to be a smooth ride. There will be the ups, there will also be the downs, unfortunately. That's just how it is. And talking of learnings, as we have done in this episode,
Mm.
we're coming to the end now of series 3. We decided the series, but there we go. It's series 3 coming to an end. And we're taking a break. So yes, we have been releasing
Yeah.
an episode every week for over a year, but we're going to take a break for December. But obviously, we will remind you of some of our seasonal episodes because we do think we have
Yeah.
got some ones that are particularly relevant to December that people might
Some good
like
ones.
to
Yeah.
tune back into. And we will be back in the new year. It still will be Mission Imperfect. That's definitely our ethos.
Of course.
But it may be a little bit different. And we're working this out, choosing which rules to follow, aren't we? as we spoke
Yeah.
about.
As per our episode on guidance for life, we are choosing to question the rules that we set ourselves that said we had to keep going with one a week and we shouldn't take a break. Um, the reality is that hasn't led to us having millions of listeners yet. Um,
Forever
so
hopeful.
why? Of course, well, the things we talk about are worth talking about. They are, as we say in our little intro spiel on at the start of each episode, they're things that come up for people all the time, and yeah, it matters to us to share that and for people to know that they're not necessarily alone in feeling that they're struggling or that life isn't as it should be, that they're getting it wrong, that they're failing, that they don't have enough confidence, or whatever it is. When people talk about these things, that creates a degree of connection and awareness that can make such a difference in life. And that's what we enjoy about Mission Imperfect. So we're following our own guidance, our own
Yes.
advice around being willing to question things. So a little break in which we'll do some more recording, come up with some more ideas, and see you. You'll hear us. We won't see you. Let's just stick with the metaphor. We'll see you in the uh,
Yes,
in the new year, all refreshed and ready to go.
we certainly will. So I think that's it for the end of this series. And yes, we will let you all know when we will be back in the new year.
Keep an eye on our social media accounts for reminders about the seasonal episodes we mentioned, and we will probably be sharing some past episodes here and there as well. The show notes give links to both our social media presences.
Yep. Okay. Take care, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect.
Please visit the show notes for details on how to contact us and for any resources we may have on the topic discussed.
Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.